It's so easy to be average. It takes a little something to be special, doesn't it? It takes a little something special to be a great player. Did you push yourself to be great today?
There wasn't a first down. Not that much. The officiating, I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today. That spot, the graphic displays the NFL penalties. The one not called on us, on that Perry, clearly was being pushed to the ball back there. And the previous penalty they called on Delano Hill, the ball is uncatchable and by the receiver. See, I'm bitterly disappointed. At least throw a hat, when you stick, when you're silent, that's a penalty.
This is the Silver Bullets Podcast on the Ozone Radio Network, your authority on all things Ohio State. Here are your hosts, Shannon, Sommers, and Chip Minnich.
Not Chip, if you have an iota of human feeling.
Buckeye Nation, welcome to another edition of the Silver Bullets Podcast on the Ozone Radio Network. I'm your host, Shannon Sommers. Today we're going to be recapping the Buckeyes in the NFL draft. So I have my right hand, Chip Minnich, with me. Chip, how are we doing today?
Doing as well as we possibly can, enjoying this beautiful weather, Shannon.
Yeah, Chip's on location because some internet issues in Northeast Ohio, probably pre-storm related.
I don't know.
Batten down the hatches. Last week we were supposed to have a show for the draft for a preview. We did record it, but it seems on my end, for some reason, my computer's recording things kind of hot. So it's kind of messed up the audio and I screwed everything all up. So last week we had Ryan with us, so we're gracious enough, even though Ryan's on location in North Carolina today, he's able to join us back today so we can recap the draft. Ryan Rosko from FactoryOfSadness.co. Ryan, how are we doing today?
Yep, doing well. Glad to be back on.
It's kind of funny. It wasn't warming up here for you, so you decided to head down south, huh?
Exactly.
Weather finally breaks, I'm out. All right, so let's go ahead and start off with, first of all, a lot of Browns fans are upset because they feel the Browns should have traded and moved down in order to get Denzel Ward, who was the fourth pick. A lot of people are saying that the Browns reached. I'm going to tell you right now, the Browns didn't reach. But, Ryan, I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts on I know when we discussed for the pre-draft, you're a fan of Ward's, but, how big is it getting Denzel Ward in a Cleveland Browns uniform?
Words can't describe. I wanted Ward as a quarterback or cornerback one for pretty much any team. He can come in, and he's not the biggest guy, but with his speed, his athleticism, he'll make up for it, and he'll end up covering A.J. Green, the Antonio Browns of the world, and they will solidify a need of for the long term for the Cleveland Browns. Glad to see it happen.
Chip, my thoughts about the Browns and everything, and we discussed for how many years now that the Browns need to draft some Buckeyes, and they go and do it. But yet, a lot of Browns fans have an outcry because they look at his size, which I think, we've discussed on a cost of field when we had Kyle Morgan on, and he plays bigger than what he is. So, you're a casual Browns fan yourself. So what are your thoughts?
I'm happy with the pick. I'm not going to lie. I actually, I thought that the possibility of the Browns adding Denzel Ward with a trade down, I thought, all right, the Browns are going to get a sweet deal from Buffalo. I have to confess, I really thought the way that the draft was going to go, I thought the Browns were going to take Sam Darnold, number 1. I thought the Giants were going to take Bradley Chubb, who wound up with the 5th pick. And then with the Jets taking Baker Mayfield, I thought that the Browns, that Buffalo was going to mortgage, with all the picks that they had, move up to 4. The Browns were going to drop down to 12, take Denzel Ward there. That being said, I am not one of these people who is saying that the Browns took Denzel Ward too high. I'll just come out and say it. I have the faith in John Dorsey and the personnel evaluators on the Cleveland Browns that they did their due diligence, that from what I understand, the offers that were made to the Browns to move back, that John Dorsey evaluated being able to take Denzel Ward at number 4, wasn't confident that moving back that Denzel Ward would still be there. So I'm happy with the pick. I think finally, Shannon, I think you're being very kind when you say, referring to me as a casual Browns fan. I think it's been just completely flabbergasting, to put it lightly, that the Cleveland Browns, I know we're going to talk about, the Bengals later on as it relates to Ohio State players, but it's been flabbergasting that the Browns, for years, with so much talent coming out of Ohio State under Jim Tressel and especially now with Urban Meyer, that the Browns have been letting it go by the wayside. So it's very refreshing to see the Cleveland Browns finally recognizing talent, especially a kid that grew up in Nordonia and has an opportunity to come home and play for the hometown team.
Yeah, Dorsey was on the Ken Carman show with Anthony Lima, I believe maybe it was yesterday, and I'm going to play this so hopefully you guys can hear it.
Joining us on the show. John, for Denzel Ward, there was an interesting tidbit there about you talking to Greg Williams, him talking about his scheme. How much of that is a mix? Because I always say, well, draft the best talent and put him out there. I don't want to hear any of your things. Well, you got to find a way to put him out there and help out the coach. Do you think that he was a little bit hamstrung then last year?
Well, I think what we've done in the offseason has shown that we felt that we needed to upgrade in the secondary. I think we've totally upgraded the secondary there with, unrestricted free agent acquisitions, some trades, and then we attacked it also in the draft. I'm very pleased with Denzel Ward. Great kid, loves the game of football, wonderful family. Now, he's got the physical features that you look for in a shutdown quarter. He's got the long vertical speed. He's got sudden areas, explosive quickness that you like in those types of players. He's got great ball skills. And I see his ceiling of growth, I see it is really high. And when you get players from Ohio State University, you're going to get guys that really like to play the game.
Did you have Bradley Chubb as the number 1 overall pass rusher on your board, if you could share?
Well, I had Chubb and I had Ward right about the same level.
No. Okay, John Dorsey joining us on the hotline.
Now, with that being said, he said he had both of them at the same, number, or even on their board. And I believe word came out that he talked to Greg Williamson, the defensive coordinator for the Browns, and said, hey, what do you need for next year? What do you need going forward? And Williams' reply was, well, we looked at the tape and Myles Garrett was like a half a step late getting there. We need somebody that is going to be able to provide some coverage in order for Garrett to be able to make plays. So, I think it's a great pick. And what the Browns did, I know a lot of Browns fans are wanting a defensive end, which in all honesty, I think next year's draft is going to have a plentiful bounty of those. So, Ryan, what do you agree with Dorsey?
Yeah, I do. Even with the grades being very similar, I think it's all dated back to Dorsey's all preferences. Okay, do you want the ball skills of maybe Josh Jackson later on, or are you going to want the athlete and the cover man Ward is? And if it's, even after speaking to Williams, if the preference was to be going for the athlete, great, and that's obviously what it turned out to be. But if it was more the overall ball skills and ball hawk that like a Josh Jackson may have potentially could have contributed to Cleveland later on, then Bradley Chubb would have been a great addition, obviously. But yeah, completely agree. It's a win-win for Browns organization.
All right. Speaking of, Ohio teams, the Browns and the Bengals, they, for some reason, were lackadaisical as far as wanting to draft any kind of Browns players. And Buckeye players. And I believe that the next Buckeye that went in a draft was Billy Price to the Cincinnati Bengals. Chip, what are your thoughts on that?
I was kind of surprised. I'm not going to lie. I thought I'm happy that Billy Price, that the pectoral injury that he had, that his physician was notifying doctors, hey, he's okay, he's recovered, he'll be ready to go. I was happy to see him picked in the first round. I just genuinely was surprised based on the mock drafts that I had seen leading up to the draft that I thought James Daniels of Iowa was kind of the prohibitive favorite to be the very first center taken. As it turns out, Frank Ragnow of Arkansas, and Ohio State fans who follow recruiting, that name may sound familiar because Urban Meyer recruited Frank Ragnow intensely, but obviously he didn't wind up at Ohio State, wound up at Arkansas. Getting back to your question, Shannon, I'm happy to see Billy Price going to Cincinnati. I think the Bengals, even though they're a rival of Cleveland, the idea that they're going to try to rebuild their offensive line, I think you can't go really wrong with Billy Price. I think he's the kind of guy that you can plug in at center. He can play guard. I think he is the kind of guy that you're looking at, barring further injury. I know he's coming off one, but barring any kind of serious injury, he looks to me like, he's got 10-year NFL pro experience, similar to what Nick Mangold just finished up with the New York Jets.
Yeah, I know. We did our recording on a Sunday, and we were talking about how he would be out for training camp, but then we recorded across the field, and Billy Price just got done talking to Kyle Morgan and made mention that, hey, I'm going to be ready for training camp. And then Adam Schefter goes on Twitter and was saying that how they're letting the teams know, and that really shot him back up into the first round. And I think it was great. Excuse me. Ryan, what are your thoughts of the Bengals picking up Price for their future?
Future, it's a great move. It depends on what they want to do with Price. If he wants to be the long-term center, as Chip alluded to, like a Nick Mangold, well, then you plug him in from the start and he's good to go. As far as maybe one alternative I could see is with the Minnesota Vikings, how they took Pat Elflein recently. If they were to go and had selected a center or guard, you could maybe adjust accordingly and fluctuate the line as needed to best suit the offensive needs. I could see a similar situation with Price if, say, next year Cincinnati's in another position where they're like, well, we still want to upgrade, let's say, left guard or right guard, but there's that quality center. We can easily move over Billy Price over to one of those other spots, and they're solidified on the interior. But he's accomplished so much, and he's just continue to rise. And I think I don't know if he's like a Nick Mangold per se, but in terms of a Ohio State comparison, can't go wrong.
No, definitely, and it's nice to see both of those guys go in the first round. And it was very nice to see Ohio professional teams actually draft guys in the first round, which was kind of like shocking. And it's kind of sent. I think, let's see, Ohio State ended up having 7 players drafted. Taquan Lewis was drafted at number 64 with the Colts. Jerome Baker with the Miami Dolphins at number 73. Number 77 is with the Bengals again. They went and got another Buckeye with Sam Hubbard. The Minnesota Vikings with the 102nd picked Jalen Holmes. And with the 168th pick, the Seahawks picked Jamarco Jones. Chip, is there any shocks to you as far as players that did get drafted, where they got drafted, or did not get drafted?
I was pleasantly surprised. I'm happy for Taquan Lewis, but I was pleasantly surprised that he was picked in the second round. I was under the impression that the fact that he was kind of a tweener, and, by that I mean, the fact that, in terms of, I believe, on across the field, when, you guys were talking with Kyle Morgan about, like Jalen Holmes, like, physically, like Jalen Holmes may be a better pro player than he was a college player, but, that it might be the opposite with Tyquan Lewis. But obviously the Colts felt differently. They selected him with the last pick of the second round. So I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm happy for him. I wish him nothing but the best. I'm also surprised that Sam Hubbard went later in the draft than anticipated. I know watching NFL Nation mock draft where they have the different beat reporters on ESPN that Sam Hubbard was the mock draft selection of the Tennessee Titans in the first round. Now, I will also add that Bill Polian, who is on that show, has a little mini, gong if he disagrees with the selection. Todd McShay quickly chimed in. He said, "Yeah, I could see Sam Hubbard being a really good value in the second round." So I was surprised to see Sam Hubbard go later than projected. But I think each and every one of those guys, I guess, just a quick final player. Jamarco Jones went way further than I anticipated, going last among the players that you rattled off, Shannon. I was led to believe that, Jamarco Jones maybe not be the most athletic of the tackles that were eligible for the draft, but certainly he had tremendous experience. And I think he's one of those guys similar to Billy Price that you could pencil in for a potentially lengthy NFL career, regardless of whether, he moves over to right tackle, whether he moves inside to one of the guard positions. I think Jamarco Jones is going to find a quality home in Seattle, especially with the idea that Seattle's going to try and get back to their power running game that they had for years under Pete Carroll.
Ryan, did you have any surprises?
Yeah, I saw Sam Hubbard as an early to mid second round pick. I really just didn't buy the first round hype and projections and everything. But being that he was drafted in third, yes, good value. But at the same time, I kind of figured he would be one of those guys where you kind of knew, like, right, if he's going to be projected in a certain area, he's not going to drop. And somehow he did, and Cincinnati got a great player as a result. But I was a little bit surprised that he actually did fall at the end of the day. And then Jalen Holmes, Minnesota didn't need a defensive end. They needed more interior help, and so I'm going to be interested to see how they want to play Holmes going forward.
Do you think they can move him inside?
On certain packages, yes. Others remain to be seen. If they would drafted him purely as an outside, on the outside help or as a defensive end, rather than inside help like a defensive tackle, well, then that changes everything. But being that he's probably going to have to play a little bit inside, I think he's going to have to add some weight, or he's going to have to do something, just because I just don't see him being a consistent role player in that kind of situation.
Excuse me. See, I was kind of surprised myself personally that Damon Webb didn't at least get picked up. I was even more surprised to see somebody like Tanner Lee got drafted before JT Barrett. But hey, I think JT Barrett landed in a perfect spot in order to start his professional career. Because, I mean, he's who best to learn from than the guy you broke all his records, right? So, I mean, it's just a natural fit. I think Drew Brees' contract's going to be up, so it's just a natural fit for JT just to take over for him and just break all the records and win some Super Bowls. Am I right, Ryan?
I can't disagree. I don't know if he's going to be the great heir apparent that people are saying, but you can't learn or can't go wrong from learning from a player like Brees.
Chip, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm going to take it in a different angle, and that is, I think I agree with you that JT Barrett's in a perfect spot. Just kind of, keep this in mind is that with the New Orleans Saints, and this is just something that I think a lot of people, if they have either forgotten or just, maybe it just might have not been something on their minds, is that the New Orleans Saints, they play half their games in the Louisiana Superdome. So you have no weather concerns whatsoever. I mean, you've got 8 perfect weather games, bar none. So for a quarterback who is criticized for lack of arm strength, for all these things, I think that not having to deal with the elements for at least half of the games is a considerable advantage. Throw in the fact that New Orleans, their divisional rivals are Atlanta, they have Carolina, and they have Tampa Bay. Now, Atlanta also plays in the Dome. Tampa Bay usually has decent weather if it's not pouring down rain, that is, or same thing in Carolina. But my point being is, okay, when New Orleans goes on the road, all right, now we're up to 11 probable decent weather games. So I think for a player like JT Barrett, who I'm as surprised as anybody, I really thought that he was going to get picked in the 7th round. My kids they saw me watching the draft. Like I said, I'm pretty much a diehard when it comes to watching the NFL draft. And they would walk by, and ask me, Dad, has JT Barrett been picked yet? No, not yet. And I was surprised as anybody that Tanner Lee was picked. It just seemed that like NFL teams, they want it so badly for a player like Tanner Lee to succeed that they're ignoring a guy who was successful, who, yes, there are some, he has some challenges to his game, but the intangibles, I think, certainly outweighed in the positive category. His leadership, his toughness, his ability to improvise, off broken plays. I agree with you, Shannon. I think he's got a tremendous role model in Drew Brees. And the roster itself, the New Orleans Saints, they have Tom Savage currently on the roster backing up JT Barrett, and they also have Taysom Hill, who formerly played at BYU and was kind of a do-it-all type guy, but not nearly as effective as a runner as JT Barrett was. So I think he's sitting in a really good spot, and I hope he makes the most of it this coming year in training camp.
Yeah, it's going to be honestly, it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. And hey, I'm rooting for him. But I will say one thing, and I want to get Ryan's take on this. When you see Michigan fans coming out and saying, laughing, ha, 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 JT Barrett didn't get drafted. What does that say about your team the 4 times that JT Barrett beat them? Ryan, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, boy, where to begin? Well, just to make it kind of short, boy, I'll put it this way. Michigan fans can say whatever they want to say. At the end of the day, JT Barrett had his success against Michigan, and while it's always going to be remaining in history, nothing's going to change it. But who's to say that the history won't continue on the benefit of Ohio State side with Haskins or whomever? With that said, I wouldn't say immaturity. I just see that's like, okay, this is a college kid. He may not have gotten drafted, and Ohio State did get 7 drafted overall, though. But at the same time, just be, appreciative of the player he is. Now, I look at Michigan and I see different players like Mo Hurts, who got drafted in the 5th round by Oakland. Now, would I have wished he was on my team getting drafted? Sure. But I'm not going to be dogging him for dropping and having a dropped draft stock as a result of health and everything else. And I'm not going to be picking apart other people that did not get drafted. So it's like, there's rivalries are great and they're always meaning something. But at the end of the day, we're all humans. So there's why play extra jabs to it when it's really not needed.
Now, to follow up on that, were you surprised that it took so long for Hurst to get drafted? I mean, do you think it was because of the heart issue, or is there really something that we're not seeing? Because, I was kind of surprised, and I was actually kind of hoping that maybe Cleveland would pick him up.
if he had fallen a little bit later, I would have assumed John Dorsey would have probably considered the idea of probably trying to trade up. But being that he had already traded up for Callaway, I figured that probably wasn't going to happen unless Hurst were to significantly drop. But in terms of why overall, I think it was because of his heart condition that is the reason why he ended up dropping.
Now, I know when we did our recording that never got published because it's in audio, the audio is just absolutely terrible. I know, Chip, you made a mention about Damon Webb, that you would see him possibly getting drafted in the later rounds, and the team that you thought that would draft him would be Tennessee. Well, here he becomes a free agent, and he immediately runs to Tennessee with Kerry Combs. So, I mean, I have to give you credit on calling that one, even though that people didn't get to hear it.
Well, thank you. It was more of just kind of a gut instinct, like with Kerry Combs having coached Damon Webb, who knew him better. And let's not forget that even though, Luke Fickell, hasn't been on the staff, that, I'm sure that Luke Fickell has a strong affinity for Ohio State players. I believe not only Damon Webb, but Elijah Goins, who had kind of made his mark on Ohio State primarily as a gunner on the special teams unit. I think he's getting a free agent look.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, Damon Webb, that was a surprise. Like you said earlier, I thought he would go. I just wanted to kind of quickly chime in on the whole Ohio State Michigan thing, because it didn't, I mean, if people from Michigan fans want to mock the fact that JT Barrett wasn't picked, and that's their prerogative, that's their choice. I will say this much, and this has nothing to do with the fact that JT Barrett wasn't picked or where he's going. If I was a Michigan fan, I'd be more concerned about the fact that Ohio State, during the course of 3 days, had 7 players picked, and more importantly, that Michigan only had 2 over the course of 3 days. That by the time Ohio State had 5 players picked, Michigan finally had Mason Cole selected. So to me, that speaks of a much, much more significant issue that Michigan fans have to kind of really stop and think about, is the fact that, all right, we have this so-called, wonder coach that is supposed to, be making us competitive, potentially for national championships, but he's not developing players that the NFL wants. And, you can say what you want about, he hasn't been there that long, he hasn't recruited that long. He's going into his 3rd year. All I know is that the results speak for themselves. Michigan, they finished 4th in the Big Ten East, and the NFL, they know where they recognize quality when they see it. And obviously they're not seeing it up in Ann Arbor, as evidenced by the results of the 2018 NFL draft.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Brian, last time when we did our recording, we asked you about, your thoughts on who the starting quarterback should be for Ohio State. So I'll let you go ahead and redo that take.
Okay. Haskins going to be the starter. He showed everything that, well, not everything, but the time that he was able to be on the field last year showed enough that he has what it takes to lead them, not in a 2-quarterback system or anything like Cardell and Braxton had, but just on his own, he'll be able to lead it. I know it may not be ideal for someone like Burrows or Martell or anybody like that, but I think they're not going to make it out to be like a one-horse, not one-horse, like a one, what's that saying? A one, I can't think
one
of
trick,
that.
one trick pony.
No, it's like one above everybody else, but kind of saying, I don't know. It's like an older saying too, but regardless, it's I just don't see Ohio State playing it out where they're going to say, like Haskins is like far and away the clear-cut favorite. It's going to be played out up until as long as they can. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't officially name him as the starter until, let's say, a week or two prior to the opening kickoffs. But, everybody that's available to be the quarterback for OSU this fall has character strengths that can put them over the top. I just think that with Haskins' ability to be in that huddle already at a young age and his athleticism, I think it will be enough to overtake any second guessing, I guess you can say. He'll end up being the starter, and he'll be putting up some very impressive numbers. I don't know if it won't be like JT Barrett numbers, how he's breaking all these records during his time at OSU, but he'll be certainly having a lot of success for the Buckeyes.
Now, do you think the Buckeyes are going to be winning the Big Ten and going into the playoffs and possibly win a national championship?
That's the plan. Hopefully all that plays out. I think being that Haskins is still so young, they're going to probably focus a little bit more, if possible, on the running game and just try to win with that, and then continue to have him to do RPOs and run throw as needed, and just continue. I wouldn't say a game manager, but he'll be doing enough to make sure that they win and have plenty of success. I'd say first things first, let's get through the Big Ten, go from there, win the Big Ten championship. If that can get done, as long as it gets done, I don't see why they shouldn't be in the playoffs. I'll put it that way.
Nice. All right, Chip, do you have anything else?
No, I'm tremendously appreciative of Ryan joining us. I'm sorry that, it was through nobody's fault. It was just one of those weird quirks of fate that we weren't able to have the show last week, but I'm just especially grateful to Ryan that we were able to have him on this week.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. No problem.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciative too. I had to figure out what's going on with my whole setup here, and just one of these days I'm going to have a professional setup, and then I'm not going to know what to do. So, but until then, right? All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Silver Bullets Podcast on the Ozone Radio Network. Don't forget to check out the other shows on the network with the Buckeye Sloopcast with Jared and Kyle. They come out on Mondays. We got Sons of Schmidt, when hopefully they'll be coming back here pretty soon. The guys have been busy, so we've got what's that one show that Acosta Field, I think, with Tony and Tony Gurman and Tom Orr. And then of course you have us, the anchor here, the Silver Bullets Podcast. Ryan, can you let folks know where they can find you at on Twitter and stuff?
Yeah, I'm the site expert for Factory of Sadness, and I can be found at SKO Sport, SKO Sports.
Chip, where can people find your work and your Twitter?
I can be found on Twitter at Chip Minnich. My last name is spelled Minich. Like Shannon, I am a contributor to the Ozone.net, but also to Athlon Sports. So you can find my work at any of those places.
And you can follow me on Twitter at ShannonCFB. You could follow us on Twitter at the Ozone Radio Network, Silver Bullets Pod. And you can like us on Facebook, Ozone Radio Network, and Silver Bullets Podcast. That's going to do it for this week, and we want to thank everybody for listening, and go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.